Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hey,
Hi.
so nice to see everyone again. It's been a crazy fall now. Snow is finally showing up in Ontario. So some people that are joining us, some people have had snow already. I know, Kath, you posted a great picture with some snow the other day. We had snow here. It looked like a snow globe was going off in Port Perry. And I know, Beth, you've had snow. Tina, have you had snow in
Yeah.
Toronto, Richmond
No,
Hill? No.
not in Toronto. I haven't been up further than Toronto, so yeah,
Okay.
no.
Yes, it is coming. Winter is coming.
I know.
With that,
And it's so beautiful. Like, I love that first snowfall, but then it's also like, then you start to, oh, more is coming. And you start to think about the shoveling. And anyways, we're not there yet. So let's just enjoy the little sprinkling we're getting.
I know the Christmas lights make me so happy looking around and just seeing all of that brightness because it gets so dark at night. So I'm looking forward to that aspect of things. It should be fun. So, but nice to
Are
see
we
everybody.
Same.
Are we falling back this weekend? The time?
We are.
Oh,
Mhm.
there you go. It'll be a little bit darker next week. So it will be nice to have some lights up outside.
For sure. All right. So we are right at 12 o'clock. So let's get started. I'm pretty excited today to have our guest on here, Tina. We're going to introduce Tina in just a few minutes. Let's get the housekeeping out of the way so we can dive into what is fun. So larger group today. So to help us out, make sure that we see your comments that come through. If you have a comment, you're just saying hi. Feel free to use chat. If you have a question, please use the Q&A for that. And then as we have time throughout the program, we can ask your questions from Q&A. We have closed captioning. So if that is something you're looking for or it helps you out, you can select closed captioning there, either on the bottom of your screen or along the side, depending on how you are set up. And for your continuing education, for your CE credits, we do have CE credits. You'll get if you've registered for today and are here with us live, you will get a follow-up email with some instructions on how to access your members portal. If you have any questions about that, or you aren't sure how to get there, or you don't receive the email, just give us an email at info@rdhu.ca and we can help you out. If you're joining from Facebook and you didn't actually register, then again, send us an email at info@rdhu.ca and we can get you set up with a personal portal. All right, that's all that I have to say. I'm going to hand it over to Kathleen to introduce our guest for today.
Very well said, Beth. Thank you. Well, I'm excited to introduce Tina Mavriyannakis. Hopefully I said that right. Yes, Tina?
Yes.
RRDH began her dental hygiene career in 1997. After graduating from George Brown College in Toronto, she completed her postgraduate program in restorative dental hygiene at George Brown in 1998. She has extensive experience in corporate dentistry, running operations in 2 national dental groups with over 40 dental practices. This non-traditional executive role gave her an opportunity to develop her leadership and management skills while practicing clinical dentistry. Tina's entrepreneurial spirit and her passion for oral health culminated in her founding the Smile Room in 2018. Serving as the CEO of this innovative mobile practice, she has created access to oral health care for thousands of Canadians facing challenges in reaching traditional dental care settings. Wow, that's amazing. I love that bio. Thank you so much for joining us, Tina. And I was going to start off asking you, like, how long were you practicing as a dental hygienist before returning to for the restorative program? But after reading your bio, 1 year, what?
Yeah, barely a year even. So
Wow. Tell us a bit about that.
I certainly, well, thank you for having me. This is lovely to be with you, lovely ladies, today. So yeah, I did dental assisting, went straight into, well, worked a year, went back into did dental hygiene, all the time wanting to get into restorative right away. So everyone at the school knew that that was my ultimate goal because I made sure everyone knew that. And I was at every restorative clinic whenever I had time and assisting and really just being present. And so once I finished hygiene in June, I got a call in August of that same summer saying, we got an opening. Someone dropped out. Do you want the spot? And of course I did. So that's how I went straight back into school and graduated the year after and never looked back. I never really been a hygienist per se. So I always say I'm the worst hygienist you could have. So that's how I get to be the world's worst hygienist.
But I love that. I love that you took the initiative to make that happen. You know, you made yourself present, you made it known what your goals are. And I think that's fabulous. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's one of the things we need to be a lot more aware of, just creating your own paths and letting people know what it is you're looking for and what it is that you want to do. And the opportunities show up when you look for them. So,
and you put yourself out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a good message, right? Because it's no one's out there looking for us, right? So you might have all these dreams inside, but there's not somebody out there. It would be nice if there was. There's no one out there kind of seeking us individually out. So good for you for putting it out there and making it known what you wanted to do. And then it worked out for rather quickly, actually, for you. So that's really inspiring to hear. So you mentioned, so about a year then before you went into the program. I would love for you to walk me through kind of a traditional day for a restorative dental hygienist. And then now that you are in that kind of field, do you still practice traditional hygiene at all? Or are you strictly, if you could talk a little bit more about how that looks?
Absolutely. So restorative hygiene, and again, I've been at it for many years. So I've seen all sorts of different systems in different offices. So it can become whatever you want to make of it. So there are a lot of restorative hygienists out there who do a traditional column of hygiene, and then as their patients need restorative work done, they will add it on to their appointment at the time and do it then and there, saving the patient a trip back to the office, which is very nice. And also, I mean, it is a business, so the dental office really benefits from that as well, because they're adding to the production and getting the treatment done on that day. So that's one way that I hear a lot of restorative hygienists doing their practice. So they're still doing hygiene and adding restorative to that. The way I've done it all along is we basically did strict restorative. So, the dentist that I was working with at the time was looking at bringing an associate on board. And I was in school for restorative. He had reached a point in his practice where he needed an extra set of hands. So his patient base had grown and he really needed help. So he was interviewing associates, and in the process started discussing with me, well, what is this restorative? How does it work, etc. And so as we talked about it, we discovered it's probably the best of both worlds for him, because his patients who adored him would still get to see him. He would still be their dentist. He would decide with them on treatment and be the one who initiates it and not really handing them off to another dentist. So I came on board the second I was done school and went to a strict restorative column. So initially he was still doing his one column and I was setting up in the next room, but not actually have my own column because I was very slow. And so he would start something and I would finish it. And if I wasn't finished still by the time the next patient started, it wasn't the end of the world because he could carry on and it was his column. And slowly, as I built my speed and expertise, then we went to having 2 full columns that we worked through the day. And we did that for 20 some odd years. And still to this date, I work with him a day and a half a week, which is awesome. So, and that's how we do it. I will do some hygiene throughout the day if it's on the person that I'm working with. And especially if we're doing quadrant type dentistry. So they're frozen, they need some perio as well as some restorative. So then I will do that. But I don't have any traditional hygiene patients per se.
Okay. And you mentioned the office that you were at. So you said you were there with kind of this system for about 20 years in that practice?
Yeah, so the practice, it was one practice that I was working on Wednesday nights, basically while I was in school. Then went to full-time after school. And I think we were in that one practice for about 10 years before he started purchasing more practices. So that's how I sort of got involved into the management of dental practices and training other dentists and restorative hygienists on how to work together, and sort of running the hygiene program. But yeah, so we're no longer at that practice. He owns many practices across Ontario and Alberta. So depending on the day, we might be at one of the many practices.
Okay. And when you first started to see, you know, when you first kind of created that column, do you remember, or now, I mean, it would be like second nature, but do you remember how the patients perceived that? Like, were they surprised or like, oh, Tina, like, how did that go with the patients that you were seeing initially?
So that's actually a really good question. And that's one of the things that I spent a lot of times discussing with our dentists and restorative hygienists. I think the approach and how you deliver it to the patient definitely sets the tone. So if you come across sort of like, oh God, there's this new person doing this new thing and I'm not sure how it's going to go, patients pick up on that. Patients pick up on our energies, and they pick up on what, not necessarily even what we're saying, it's just how we're presenting it. So right off the bat, he was very good at just empowering me and saying to the patients, you know, she's the pro. So she has a specialty degree in restorative. And they just kind of be, you know, patients that had seen him for 20 years. And all of a sudden there's this girl who's like, no, I don't want you. But it was just how it was approached. And at the end of the day, there were people who insisted, no, I, you know, travel for an hour to come see you and I want to see you. And so be it, it's your choice. And I went to the back and had a coffee, which is always nice. But over time, even those patients changed and sort of got used to the idea. And, you know, after a while, if they show up and say, I'm getting a filling, and we'd forgotten that they were one of the people who would only see him. And then they'd be like, no, you do my fillings. And he'd be like, oh God, you don't want me to do your fillings. I'm rusty. I haven't done one in 3 years. So slowly, it changed. So I think ultimately it's, you have to have the confidence and you have to trust in each other. So, you know, initially, I remember there was another practice that I was supposed to do restorative at. Like, that's why they hired me to do hygiene, because they heard I was in restorative school. I think I worked one day as a restorative hygienist there, and that was it, because it was an older practice. I was very young at the time, and they were used to their practitioners having been there forever. And I remember the first set of fillings I was doing in there, I looked up at one point and there was like 3 heads in the operatory going like this, looking over. Well, everyone picked up on the fact that this is something new and something different.
Yeah.
Right? So whereas with Matt, it was kind of like the first patient that I saw, I said, are you going to come back and check the fillings? He goes, do I need to? I said, well, no, but do you want to see it? He goes, I'd rather not, but you know, if there's something you want me to check, I'll come and check. And I think that was very important, because again, it makes me feel like, okay, well, you trust me enough that if something's wrong, I will call you in. Still to this date, there are times where something happens and I go, God, I can't deal with this, so I'll call him in, and vice versa. But you have to have that.
Yeah. And I think how you highlighted the trust, and I think building the trust, showing your value, is how it all began. It's like you started off in this zone and then it slowly transitioned. So some people, I think they finish school and they're like, okay, I'm going to get this full-time restorative gig. You have to go in with a confidence. You've got to go in with a plan. And you gave us some opportunities for people to bring this back to clinic. And some people may not realize, my dad has used a restorative hygienist for years. And at one time he had 2 full-time restorative hygienists running in the practice. So we were busy, and it was all about the verbiage and that communication. And your story of, you know, I really want Dr. Hyland to do it. he would be like, listen, that's exactly what he'd say. I haven't done fillings for years. Trust me, this is who it is. Or he would sit down to do a filling and they'd say, sorry, I thought the girls were going to fix this. And yes, the girls are gentlemen that do restorative in our practice. It was the girls. So sometimes it did get referred to that, but it was like, no, isn't Debbie coming in? Isn't Vicky coming in? They're the experts. You told me they were the experts. How come you're doing this now, Jim? And so it really can work. And it's really a very fascinating and fulfilling career. So I'm really happy that you gave us those options. So you also work at George Brown, as we know, or you've helped out a bit with the restorative program there. So what advice for people that are thinking of going into restorative, what advice would you have for them as far as taking the restorative program or creating this action plan from taking it to implement it maybe into a practice?
Well, I think like anything, when you add on skills to your skill set, you need to let people know that you've got those skills. And you almost have to become a little marketer for your new skill set. So we have students that have offices that send them to the school to upgrade their skills and come back because for whatever reason, they've decided they need a restorative hygienist in their practice, which is awesome. But we also have students who come in who quit a full-time fabulous dental hygiene position and they're going out there like, okay, I'll take my chances and figure it out. So your options are you find a practice that is familiar with restorative hygiene and apply to that and go there. Or honestly, you need to create it for yourself. So within any practice, start simple. So we, in our Alberta practices, we had at least three of our hygienists come back to Ontario to take restorative and come back. And initially it was kind of like, you pick the easy stuff. Find some buckles to do, some occlusals to do. Don't jump in with a massive MODB LQRX on a 2.7, right? Like, you need to pick something that, again, builds your speed, builds your confidence, and go from there. At the end of the day, you have to be your own advocate and tell the practice and tell the dentist and tell the assistants and the patients about your new skill set and how it's going to help the office. So most dentists, especially who are owner dentists, will appreciate knowing that they've got someone on their team who cares about the bottom line as well. So be like a little business person and sort of present your case. So say, by me doing restorative, we're going to add production by this much. Keeping the patient in the chair to do that restorative saves you this many dollars in turning that room around, especially post-COVID with all the PPE that we use. So every time you dismiss a patient and have them come back to do a procedure, you've lost an extra $15, right? Whereas if you kept them in that chair, and it might not seem like a lot, but it adds up. Plus you've had the additional production in there. So these are the ways. I think a lot of times as hygienists, we unfortunately or fortunately, we focus more on the clinical side of it and think it's a bad word to discuss the business side of things, right? Whereas I think it goes hand in hand. If you have a successful practice that is producing well, then you can actually treat more patients. You can actually upgrade your technology. You can upgrade things you can offer to your patients. So it's not bad as clinicians to consider the business side of things.
I think that's
it's good perspective.
I call them the entrepreneur, not the entrepreneur, but the intrapreneur, working within a practice, but treating it like it's your own. That's how I always practiced. And I really got into the business side of almost every practice where I was.
Yeah. I think you gave us some really great perspective on that as far as even just starting small, like go in and say, listen, this is what I know I can really help with. I'll do those same day. We used to call them emergency buckles or emergency occlusals. And it was sort of our own little joke, but it was like, if we can fit it in today, we don't have to have someone call back. We don't have to do this. Patients are so excited that you're going to figure out how to help them. And that's how you build your confidence. So now, just out of curiosity, what is your favorite thing to do? Because every hygienist has something different, but what is your favorite procedure to do?
You're putting me on the spot. Honestly, I love doing anterior bonding. because it's a lot of fun, and I actually don't get to do a ton of it because we've traditionally done a lot of veneer work. So we have patients who specifically come to see us because we do porcelain veneers. But then when I do get to do some interior bonding, it's fun. You get to be a little bit artsy, and it's access is easy, and it's just a lot of fun. So I would say if I had to do pick a favorite restorative, yeah, I'd say interior bonding is fun.
I wasn't
Okay.
sure
What's the
if I would pick,
hardest?
or crown or anterior. I wasn't sure which one you were going to go with. I did think that was going to be your choice, but I wasn't sure. But yes, Beth, that's a good question. What is your hardest? What do you find the most challenging?
Really subgingival 4/6s that really could use that crown lengthening and crowns, and the patient for whatever reason cannot go to that step, and we need to restore that. Those are challenging because, you know, your isolation is never going to be great, and we still keep some amalgam and a triturator somewhere because sometimes that is the best restorative of choice there. So yeah, those are challenging when you're sort of in a situation where you have to do what I call subpar dentistry. But I guess the thing that I always remind myself is that's what's best for them in that situation. So are we just going to leave it because they can't afford to do the crown lengthening and the crown procedure today, or are we going to try our best to give them a few years or a few months or whatever the case might be?
And a question came
There's
in.
yeah.
Assuming you have your own assistant. So someone was wondering, do you have to do it all on your own? But the way we worked in our practice is we actually had 3 assistants for like Dr. Hyland and the restorative hygienist at that time, because then there was always that floater to help change over the rooms, manage it all. But at least you need sort of an assistant for each provider. So you would have one, and your doctor would have one, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So we did a lot of different scenarios. So there were times where we had 3 different columns going. We did a lot of CEREC dentistry at some point. So we kind of had a room that was a CEREC room, and then the other rooms that were doing other things. So one of the things, again, you'll find that no matter what it is that I'm doing, I'm always thinking of that patient first and foremost. So they're the center of our universe when they're in our chair. So the idea of sort of, okay, someone's coming, someone's going, it makes them feel like they're on a bit of a conveyor belt, which you never want your patients to feel. Just because we're going fast, it doesn't mean we're doing it carelessly. So one of our rules, number 1 rule always is the assistant stays with the patient from the word go to the very end. So they will go to the front, greet them, bring them in, stay with them throughout the entire appointment, and then walk them out and say, you know, goodbye. And if there is to be a post-op call an hour later, a day later, whatever, it's that same assistant who does it. Because then the patient knows that I have one person that is my person while I'm here. So if I'm tired, if I need a washroom break, if something's hurting, whatever, I know who to go to. Or if I have questions after the fact, I know who to call. One of our scenarios, so the dentist that I work with is left-handed and I'm right-handed. So on top of everything else, when I arrive, the chair has to be turned and things have to be moved around. So just to add complexity to things. So again, once you have that constant, it makes for a nice, smooth transition. So yeah, definitely 1 assistant per patient. So depending on how many rooms you've got going, that's how many assistants you need. And really nice to have a floater assistant to sort of help make sure, you know, rooms are being set up. And ideally you have 1 spare room as well. So again, you know, as one's cleaning one, then you know that you have another room set up and ready to go.
Nice. So when you decided to go independent and open the Smile Room, like what prompted you to do that, to make the switch?
So I had been traveling, as I mentioned, we had some practices in Alberta. So I had been traveling for many years back and forth between Ontario and Alberta. And it was one of those situations where initially it was like, we'll do this for a year, then we'll do this for 2 years, and it just kind of keeps going, right? At the end of 2017 or mid 2017, my mom was diagnosed with dementia. And she was sort of the person who was my backup at home. So, you know, if kids needed to be picked up from school and my husband couldn't do it and I wasn't around, mom was the one who did it. So to me, that was sort of okay, I need to stop traveling. I want to be home. Not only can I not count on her to help me, I need to be here to help her, because now, you know, things have changed a lot. So I took about a year to transition myself out of needing to be out in Alberta, and came back to Ontario sort of full time, but really didn't have a clinical role set out for myself. And I thought, I mean, the thing was, I said, I'm just going to retire. This is it. I'm good. I'm going to spend a bit of time with my kids and my mom, and I'm done. And I've discovered that about myself many times over again, that I can't sit still for very long. So that retirement lasted probably about, I don't know, 2 months at most. And I started getting antsy and almost felt like I was going into a weird depression, because it was like I had no purpose. You know, when you go from being fully on and running around to, well, my decisions today are I'm going to make breakfast and then figure out the rest. And I was very bad at that. I was very bad at sort of just being. So the idea of, and I'm sure we've all heard this as dental hygienists, if you dare say to a patient, you really should floss a little bit more, they go, why don't you do it for me? I'll come up here every day and you can do it for me. I've heard that many a times, right? And so the idea of people working off site or remote was always something that was interesting. And I was like, well, how can you make that happen in dentistry? One day I was talking to my brother during that retirement phase, and he mentioned that a massage therapist had shown up to their office that day. And I had heard that before. I knew there was mobile massage therapists that would come to workplaces. But this time it kind of hit differently, and I started asking questions about, well, how does that work? You know, what does she bring with her? Where does she set up? Who books appointments for her? And in the back of my mind, I was trying to figure out, well, can I duplicate that in the world of dentistry? So I started looking around at what the logistics would look like. What do I need to bring with me if I want to show up to someone's office and set up a hygiene clinic? So I started talking to different people, went online, connected with a whole bunch of people. That's how I got connected with AMTA. So there's a group out, well, they're international, but based out of the States. And it's a whole bunch of different mobile practitioners that have come together. And I started asking questions and discussing with, you know, what did equipment look like? 'Cause equipment that I remember is, you know, when you go to spring clinic, the ODA spring clinic, and you see the army folk with their, so that's what I was picturing. And I was like, ooh, but, you know, there's some really lovely looking mobile equipment now. So I started asking around and got some equipment and started testing out my theory that we're going to deliver dental hygiene to people's workplaces, because people are too busy. They can't come to work or come to our offices. And the challenge was to figure out what's keeping people from coming to the office and how can we eliminate all those blocks. So started small, started going into smaller offices and maybe businesses that didn't have benefits. And this was sort of like a way for them to say, we'll compensate whatever it is. Just as part of your benefits package, we'll pay into your cleaning if you do the cleaning that's arriving here. And it became a perk for the different businesses. And slowly I built the Smile Room at your workplace. So show up to offices, and we started small and then ended up pretty big with some pretty large clients, some law firms. So again, lawyers are probably one of our best clients, or were, because they're busy and their times are very valuable. So for them to take 3 hours out of their day to come to the dental office for a cleaning, it costs them a lot more than if I was to show up there and all they're missing out is that 1 hour or however long it is that they're in the chair, because then they can just walk back to their desk. So 2018, I started that business, and by 2020, it was fully running and fully functional. And I had 2 hygienists working for me, and we were, in different corporate offices at all times. One of the obvious areas that could use mobile dentistry is the elder care, because again, mobility challenges and all sorts of different reasons where they can't get into the dental office. But honestly, my heart just didn't have it in me at the beginning to go into those spaces. I was going down the journey with my mom, and I just needed to block as much as I could out. But when I got to that point where I had other hygienists working with me, I thought, well, I have the stuff, I have the infrastructure, I can make it happen, and I don't have to show up myself, because that was what was holding me back at the time. So I started talking to some retirement homes and long-term care facilities about basically repeating what we had built in the corporate setting and bringing it into the elder care communities. So that was January of 2020, when everything was set and ready to go. And in March of 2020, we all know what happened. And so we got completely shut down. No one was going to work, so we weren't going to their workplaces anymore. And elder care communities were in complete lockdown, so we weren't going in there either. So a year and a bit into it, and I thought, well, might as well just shut the door down. It's just never going to happen again, right? But once elder care communities became more and more vaccinated, and we as healthcare providers were vaccinated, so we were sort of the first 2 groups that were safe to intermingle again. And the elder care communities were definitely very in need of dental help, because no one had been there, and people who could typically get out weren't getting out because they were too afraid to go into dental offices and whatnot. So we started back into our elder care communities, and honestly, that has become our main focus. It's taken corporate that much longer to get back. I don't think anyone's really fully back to being at work yet. At best, they're a hybrid model, and on any given day, there's about 30% of their workforce on site. So we have not fully gone back to our corporate sites yet. Some have reached out, again, trying to find perks to encourage their team to show up. But our main focus is definitely with the elder care.
I'm really glad you went through that, kind of the history. First of all, it shows your resiliency, right? I mean, you did not have an easy path. It was an uphill battle. Mm-hmm. But knowing you were coming on the show, one of the questions that I was going to ask was, what would be your traditional patient base or your client base? And I think that I made assumptions with who I thought that would be, or what your answer would be. But it's interesting just to see even the progression, starting out with businesses, and then the pandemic, and how that sort of changed your journey. So if I'm hearing you right now, your main patient base would be kind of long-term care facilities. Is that accurate?
And retirement homes, yeah.
Retirement homes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
If I can take you back to when your more predominant patient type would have been the businesses, how did you, because that could come back around, right? The shift is that people are coming back to their offices. But initially when you did that, how did you get your name out there? How did you get them to say, this is a great idea, come on in?
So again, making your pathway. So I talked to anyone who would listen, and also use my connections. So anyone who had a small business that I knew, friends, I reached out to them and said, hey, I'm starting this. Would you be interested in me showing up to your business? You have 10 employees. They're not forced to do this, but they can, and you become the hero. So that's how it kind of started. And then, you know, my husband's in the business world out there. So it was kind of like, you need to connect me to everyone and anyone you know. So I definitely used a lot of those connections. But there's a lot that goes into the background. So it's never as simple as, hi, here's my offering, I'll be there on Monday. So, you know, there's a whole process of going through the benefits and explaining to them how it works and showing them pictures and bringing them things to show. Because, you know, a lot of them are kind of like, well, what do you mean you're bringing the dental office here? Well, where does the water come from? And how is the stuff cleaned? And, you know, so a lot of visuals and a lot of discussions and just outlining benefits and how their employees are going to benefit from this. And then a lot of presentations. So I did a lot of presentations in different corporate settings. So if they had a health day, I would be there and pointing out benefits of having regular oral hygiene visits and stats about, you know, people who aren't getting the care they need. And it was eye-opening to me as well, because I always thought people who don't come to the dental office, like things that I imagined as blocks were financial, number one, and then maybe fear. But what I discovered is, you know, the underserved aren't necessarily just the poor. Some of the, like I said, lawyers were our biggest clients, and they have the money, they have the benefits, they have the means, but they just didn't have the time. Or some people said, I hate the smell of dental offices. I still don't know what a dental office smells like, but apparently it smells like a dental office. So, you know, if I'm showing up in your office, I'm in your space, you have that added comfort and you don't smell like a dental office. So, so these are things like there are things that are stopping people from walking into our doors that we can't even imagine. And then as you sort of get out there, you hear it from the people why they're not showing up. We just think, okay, well, I've told you to come every 3 months. You should. And if you don't, well, I don't understand why not. But there are so many blocks holding people back.
I really like that you've shared that journey with us, because I think what you highlighted are really some of those things you've had to overcome. And I think what we have to take away is some of our bias. We think that this is the reason and we just assume. And what we're learning more and more again is we have to take our bias out of it and just really ask and be ready to listen to what they have to say. And you have pivoted and pivoted and pivoted each time. And so it's fascinating when I think of what I thought mobile dentistry would be and where we are today. Like 20 years ago, my good old father, Dr. Jim Highlander, Dr. Hygiene, sent me on this journey where he'd have patients that couldn't crawl up a flight and a half of stairs to get to our office. And he'd say to them, listen, you don't worry. Carrie's going to come see you and she'll assess if there's a concern, and I will come and assess it. And if we have to, we'll figure out where we can see you to offer care. So literally I showed up with like a little headlamp and a flashlight in my little toolbox, and off I went trying to do oral hygiene the best I could and provide fluoride in that setting. And then once we figured out that there were these opportunities, we were like, hey, let's align with mobile hygienists that can offer these services. And it is so exciting to be able to do that. And I know, Beth, you've worked in independent practice in that way. And so there's so many different choices and options with that. So you've expressed some of your biggest challenges. What have been some of your best rewards? Because we always focus sometimes on the negative. And I think you have done so much, whether it be for the populations or for even just seeing the growth of the hygienists and the other team members you have. What have been some of your biggest celebrations?
At the risk of sounding corny, every patient we see is a celebration, honestly, and I say this without any exaggeration. I always say this practice, the smile room, and the way it's functioning today, it feeds my heart and soul. It really, truly does. Because you know, there's financial incentives that we all have and we should have. And I think the first part of my career was really built on sort of feeding into that professional growth and getting out there and getting involved in the business side of everything, and looking at numbers and figuring out productions and how I can increase them and what the bottom line meant to me personally and my family. So when I decided that I was going to retire, I would have been financially okay. I was in a position, luckily, that I could have said, okay, I'm done doing this and then I'll figure out something. Starting this business and going out there and seeing folk who would normally and otherwise not have the care, that's what just fills me right up. And it is a celebration every single day. So when we see someone who's 103 and hasn't had anyone look inside their mouths for God knows how long, and at the end of that appointment, even though they're nonverbal and they really didn't look like they cared that we were there, at the end of that appointment, you see a difference in them. And you see that there's a level of relaxation because now their mouth isn't full of plaque and food and all of that, which is uncomfortable. So whether you can express that or not, you feel it. So when someone has been there and caringly removed all that and made you feel fresh and good, you've made a difference. And again, I consider myself super lucky that I've got some amazing hygienists that work in our team. And I watch them sometimes in awe, and I walk away with the biggest, goofiest grin every single time because they make a difference. They play the music that that person wants to hear, whether, again, they were able to tell you or not. So one of the questions on our medical history, which usually is being filled out by a POA, is what was your mom or your dad's favorite music? And we have that, and that's what we play for them when they show up for their appointment. And that makes a difference.
Oh, that's so nice.
Right.
That's beautiful.
I got goosebumps too.
Yeah. Your heart is really coming out, like, you know what I mean? Like, we're just how much you genuinely care for people, your patients, the people working with you. Like, that's really beautiful, Tina.
Thanks. I'm honestly, I'm the luckiest person. So
Tina, you have, so you're in the long-term care facilities and retirement homes, and you have how many dental hygienists that work with you?
Currently 4.
4. So what does a typical day look like for them? Are they booked every day? Do they all follow the same experience? Because obviously the patient experience is very important to you. So they all follow that as well. And so what does that look like?
So I'm very much of a systems person, because it was part of my, career and sort of the way we built everything. So we have systems in place for everything. So there's a checklist you can follow that says this is how it's going to go. Yet at the same time, keeping it very customized to that individual. So we have sort of our guideline. And typically, we show up to whatever place we show up to for the day. So they're there from 9 to 5 or whatever the hours might be, and they're solidly booked. So from the minute they get there, they know which residents they're seeing. The team at the home knows which residents they're seeing. The POAs have done. So everything in the background's done. Medical history has been cleared. Consent forms, all of that has been cleared. So when the hygienist arrives there with an assistant, their number one focus is that patient for the hour that's in their chair. So
yes. Can I, like, are they in one room? Like, do they go and they're in one room for the day? Yes. Or is it, okay.
We set up in a central location, and they bring us the residents. So whether it is just sort of guiding them to where we are and they join us, or if they have to bring them with a wheelchair or whatever it might be. If they're in a wheelchair, we will see them in their wheelchair. If they have the ability to get into our mobile chair, they get into our mobile chair. We don't typically go to bedside because of stream of like IPAC reasons and all stream of other things. But there are times where we have to, so we make special considerations. So we'll book that patient at the very end of the day so that we'll clean everything up and then have a limited number of things that arrives at their bedside. And then after that, we're not, seeing another patient. So, but yeah, once we're in a place, we're there for the day.
Nice.
So if you identify that a resident needs additional care that's outside the scope of hygiene, do you have people that you work with? How do you bring or facilitate some additional care or working and collaborating with their other healthcare providers?
So we have some denturists, a couple of denturists that work with us, and a couple of dentists that work with us as well. So again, when we were in the corporate side of things, it was never necessary to have a dentist with us on our team, especially when we're in downtown Toronto, which is where most of our clients were. There's a dentist at every corner of every street, of every intersection. So it was kind of like, if you have a dentist that looks kind of funky, you should go see your dentist. If you don't, I don't know, step outside, there's one right there. Or we would help facilitate, referrals or whatever. So it was never a thing. We utilize teledentistry. So we have a teledental portal that we can use, that we can share images, share findings, and all of that with any dentist, any specialist that we may refer to. And that worked out beautifully. Once we're in the elder care communities, the difference is that there's a lot of mobility issues. So residents that we see, it's not as easy to say, you know what, Mrs. Smith, you really need to go see a dentist, because it's not going to happen. So we had to figure out a way to collaborate with dentists that could come on site and take care of their needs. So yeah, that's how we do it. If there's specialists that need to be referred to, then that's a different story. Again, we use our portal to send information and referrals to oral surgeons, periodontists, etc. You don't really get a lot of them who are mobile. So then extensive arrangements need to be made to bring the patient to a hospital setting or whatnot. But we leave that in the hands of the care home and the POAs.
You really have pioneered so much to move from a traditional setting that is sort of, I use the word comfortable. It's not that work is ever comfortable, but the traditional zone, to start this, to pivot through COVID, to provide the smile room, and even with you wanted to do it, but you couldn't physically, and kind of finding the right team to put in place that your journey or your vision can go to help other people is so inspiring. And I know that you've got places from not just local where you live, like you cover a lot of Ontario and different organizations that you work in. And so I just want to say, honestly, from all of our people that are watching, we've got a large group of people, like, I thank you. Like, you have done so much. And you've inspired us. And every time I talk to you, when we get to kind of see each other on the passing of all these different conferences, it's like, hi, we high five, and it's usually in the US, which is funny. But I do want to highlight another area that you are also involved in as far as moving mobile dentistry, and that has to do with AMTA. And I think that a lot of people aren't aware of this organization in this part. So can you please tell the people that are listening a little bit about AMTA, what your role is, and why it's such a great opportunity?
Absolutely. So AMTA is American Mobile and Teledentistry Alliance. I have been a member since its initiation in 2020. And I am currently the vice president of the AMTA organization. It's really sort of the meeting of all these different independent mobile dental providers. So when you're a mobile dental provider, and if anyone listening today is a mobile dental provider, you feel like you're this sort of little person on a little island all by yourself reinventing dentistry. So you try to figure out, what box do I need to fit all my stuff? Or, what rolly thing will I use for all my stuff? And so these are things that mobile dental practitioners deal with on a daily, trying to figure out logistics of things that we take for granted in, brick and mortar practices. So with AMTA, it was sort of, I I kind of met with these people, and it was like, oh my God, there's more of us around here. And there's a lot more. So there's, organizations that are massive, and they have those massive, ridiculously big van things that open up into like a 3 operatory practice, and they drive from city to city and from community to community. And then there's individual single hygienists who show up with their little rolly cart, and that's their mobile practice. So we all come together and with the goal to learn from each other, be exposed to more suppliers that sort of fit our world, and also coming up with regulations and standards, because that's one of the things that lacks in that world is, IPAC is pretty clear with what happens in a dental office, not so clear where we're mobile, like, what should your container look like if you're traveling with dirty instruments, or and all those details. So coming up with standards would definitely put practitioners, and then also obviously the public, at ease, knowing that, okay, there's some standards here that we're following, right? So that's what really MTID does. And like I said, it is an international organization. So we have a lot of members from Australia. There's a lot of mobile dentistry in Australia. And then members in Saudi Arabia, we have members in Europe, and then obviously the US and Canada.
Very good. Well, thanks for sharing about, there's just so many different things that you do. We started with your journey with the restorative. You teach at George Brown as well, correct?
Right, in the clinical,
right?
restorative.
In the clinical?
Yeah.
Okay, clinical, and then you've got the smile room, teledentistry. I mean, it's really an impressive resume.
Thank you.
Yes, Tina.
So thank you for
awesome.
being here.
Thanks.
Very inspirational. You're pretty awesome.
Thank you. You guys are all pretty awesome. You're humbling me, but thank you. It's
So Tina.
Yes.
If someone wants to get hold of you or ask you some questions, how can they reach out to you? What's the best mode to do that?
I think email would probably be the best, and it's pretty simple. It's tina@thesmileroom.ca. I am not crazy active on social, but I go through spurts of it. So I'm that resto girl on Instagram. So those are probably the easiest ways to reach me.
I'll include it in the follow-up email as well when we send it out next week. And yeah, that was really awesome.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
So, Kathy, why don't you share what's coming up with RDHU? We've got lots of stuff happening at the end of the year. It's a good opportunity to kind of stay connected and be engaged. And Tina, again, thank you from the bottom of all of our hearts and all of our watchers. You really are inspiring in all the different careers. And I think what you've brought to the table is that if you don't put it out there, you don't ask for what you want, or just start kind of pioneering it, your journey may think you're going here, and all of a sudden you take a right turn and you end up over there. And really, the other takeaway from here is the bias. You got to take out what you think people want and just ask and be ready to listen and put yourself out there. So thank you.
Awesome. I have a couple of short videos. One is with our sponsor from Collab Dentistry, which is it's a new app that's just launched in Ontario, and it's for the independent dental hygienist who wants to rent out a room. So you can rent out a room and set up your clinic there. So it's kind of like an Airbnb. And if somebody has a free room where they don't have a restorative dental hygienist there, or if they don't have somebody utilizing that room, you could also rent out your room to an independent dental hygienist. So I've got a quick video about them, and then just a quick video about courses that are coming up for November. And yeah, we're coming to the end of the year. So it's if you're needing any assistance to finish the year strong, we are here to help you. All right, so please tell me, Beth, if I'm good.
Okay, I'm on it.
I think I'm just going to share You tell me.
Okay. Oh, did you share your sound?
Yeah.
Really?
You can't hear the sound?
No. Maybe.
I was doing so well.
It's all good.
Please.
If not, I'll make up just put me in coach.
The sound is the most important. Let's to get the goosebumps going. Okay, here we go.
If any watching has any questions for Tina, all the rest, please put them into either the Q&A. If you have any comments for Tina, you can always put them into the chat function. I do think that many people are going to be saying a big thank you for us having you on, Tina, and we can answer them, or if you want to answer them yourselves, you can as we're going, okay? But definitely go ahead, Kath.
Okay, let me know if it's good.
Okay.
Okay, one more. All right. Stop share. Did I hit stop share?
You did. You're all good.
So Tina, I don't know if you had
Well,
those awesome messages that were put in. A lot of people have said how inspiring your story is, and I think you're gonna, you're a great movement for change and change in the right direction. So thank you so much. And everyone's next show in December, we have Dr. Sanj coming on. And so it's going to be a great way to end 2023. And so make sure that you mark that in your calendar. We are excited to have her on our next show.
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, have a great
Thanks,
week.
Tina.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye.